All right. Well, just to be respectful of everyone's time, we're going to go ahead and get started with this. First off, thank you to everyone who is on here and, took the time out of your day to be a part of it. Obviously, with everything that's going on right now, this is something that is it's uncharted territory for us. There's a lot of things that we're still trying to figure out, and it's a very fluid situation. But so far, we've been having a lot of, really important conversations and chats internally, but then also, having a lot of great conversations with you guys, our clients. So we really, we appreciate you being part of this. There were slides and things that I had even in last week's presentation that are no longer relevant. So I've even had to do some updating there. And I think this is going to be something that's going to, really continue to be a topic in our industry for a little while. Even insofar as, the order that was put out by Governor Brown didn't really specifically say what we can and can't do in regards to the real estate world. So some of it's just going to be up to us kind of deciding, how we want to go with that. So what we'll look at as we're going through this presentation is the whole point of it is to kind of figure out where we're at, what we're doing now, what we can do on a go forward basis, and really create a plan where you can still be, somewhat productive in your business and in your world, while things are continuing to change, in regards to the situation. So, as we get in here, first thing I want to do is just a couple of housekeeping things. If you haven't already, let's see here, there we go, got it working. If you haven't already, I've got everybody on mute at the moment, and I've also got stop video, so that way, unfortunately for you guys, you're not going to be having a conversation with me. But if you do want to have or you have something you want to say, or you have any questions, go ahead and use that chat feature that's in the bottom middle of your screen. That's where it should be. But currently I have you all on mute, and you can turn off your video if you don't want people, seeing into your world right now. Now, when we dive into this, one of the things that I want to touch on is, this is me, for anyone who doesn't know me, Aaron Stelle, and I'm with West, which is the marketing and technology arm of WFG National Title. And so, we have all of our escrow staff and our title staff and everybody else that's part of WFG. And then we have a team of nerds that are part of West, where our whole mission is to be up to date on everything that is marketing, technology, lead generation, branding, strategies, things along those lines. And the reason that I bring those up is, my first inkling on this type of stuff is to immediately figure out what we can do in regards to sales, marketing, strategy, and to leverage situations. And one of the things that we're going to be doing both as a team of nerds and, as West as a company, is we're going to be looking for ways to continue to work with you guys, our clients, and either produce content, do things along the lines of this, where we're doing webinars so you can still you can be learning and you can still be moving on with your business. But then we're also going to be looking to really stay up to date. So we're working with our leadership on a daily basis, trying to figure out, okay, what can we do? How can we keep everyone safe? And that's, you, your clients, our internal people. And so this is going to be an ongoing conversation. And then, one other thing I really want to point out is, yes, I am a big marketing technology salesperson, but I'm not a doctor. So when we start getting into the actual virus and things like that, I'm really going to defer to people that are a lot smarter than me and know far more than I do in regards to, kind of what's going on out there. And then one last little piece of housekeeping, for you agents that are here in Oregon and are looking to get the credit hour, the way that we've had to do it, this is a fluid situation for us on that as well. But so far what we have is I've got a slide at the end of the presentation where I will give you some information and a code and an email that you can then send in and get your credit hour. So far, that's what the state's allowed us to do. And so we're just trying to follow their lead and their instruction. So it will not work on the replay if anybody watches the replay down the road. So just that as a heads up, and now we'll dive in here. So, the first thing that I look at is we're getting really into the ins and outs of, what's going on with this coronavirus and the whole situation that's going on right now is, as I mentioned, sales and marketing is the first place that my mind traditionally goes. And how can we, continue to be out front, and how can we continue to market? But I really want to make a very clear distinction, with the current situation that we're in, and that this is not a sales and marketing moment. This is a people moment. And what we need to do is we need to remember our priorities. And while we want to continue to be, as effective as we can be, this is a time to create community. This is a time to come together. This is, really a time for you to show your professionalism as an industry, and where we can really come together and be leaders, inside of our communities. And so I don't want this to come across as something where, we want to go really push hard and try to continue to get sales through and get, transactions to continue happening. Even though we want those things, what we really want to do is focus on how can we keep ourselves, our community, and our people safe. And so it really is a people moment. And I want to make sure that that is the focus of what we're trying to accomplish. Now, if we look at, what the risk of this virus is, there was a really interesting study that was commissioned. It was the World Health Organization, but it was Imperial College over in Europe. And they have, there were 5 different organizations that were pushing this information out, and they were coming together to collaborate for this study. And I will send out an email afterward that actually has the link to it if you want to go through all the charts. But one of the things that was really important is if we start looking at why this is actually a risk and why this is important, is really, if you look at the infection fatality ratio on the far right, if you're over the age of 60, it can be 2%. Once you get to 70, it's 5%, and then 80 plus, it's 9.3%. So, this isn't something where you get a little cough or a little sneeze and it just is inconvenient for a little while. It can potentially be very dangerous. And if we look at why we're now seeing, the governor and many states, and I wouldn't doubt that some sort of a national thing will happen soon, is here's a little chart that talks about the number of beds that are available for basically people that are sick in hospitals. And if you see the red line, that's how many they can actually hold. And if we do nothing, that is that black line where we get way out of whack. And we just do not have the capacity in order to take care of people if we don't spread it out a little more. If you see that blue line down at the bottom, that's isolation, home quarantine, social distancing, and then keeping, the people north of 70 basically inside and isolated. You can see how much that does make a difference in regards to people taking up the beds and being closer to the capacity. And so it's really interesting to kind of see how that's going to play out. But when they talk about flattening the curve, which is the term I've heard over and over again, this is what they're talking about. They're trying to make it to where we don't have a giant spike that the healthcare industry is just unable to contain. So then we want to look into, all right, how does this actually affect real estate? And what are we seeing to this point? And this is some of the stuff that's actually, really been the most fluid in the last little bit here. Initially, when we were talking last week, we really hadn't seen a lot of change in activity. What we had seen is we've seen a slight drop in regards to showing and things like that. But then in addition to that, what we've seen is that orders had been fairly, they've been fairly steady for us here at WFG. And so we hadn't seen drastic changes. We're really curious, and we're having a lot of conversations on what that will look like this week, but really it hasn't been a huge change in regards to the standard numbers that we would look at. However, we have seen some pretty big differences in regards to how people are operating. And so this is some of the stuff that we've seen. Most offices are now closing down to the public. If there's you need to go in there, you need to get something done, you can, but you're not going to be able to get in there for the most part with your clients. Limited deliveries, this is important. We have between FedEx and we even have, our delivery companies and UPS and USPS, they can't get into everywhere. And there's certain businesses where they can't get at all. And if we look at elder care facilities or care homes or places along those lines, they really are not open to anyone at all. They basically lock those down because those people are the ones that are the most vulnerable in this situation. So those are some of the major changes we're seeing right now in day-to-day operation. The other thing that we've seen is obviously within, and this is even new since last week when I originally put this together, RMLS has completely taken open houses off of the MLS. You can't even do that anymore. There is now an OREF COVID-19 addendum, which is interesting. And OAR has been pushing for you guys to be excluded from the shelter at home thing. So that appears to have worked. I don't know whether that's, we're going to kind of see how that continues to clarify, but at this point in time, you can still do that. And then the last thing that we see is we're seeing a lot more push for, courtesy signings where the people get to stay in their home when they're trying to get these transactions closed. So, that's what we've seen kind of on a macro level right now. Obviously it's changing on the daily, but that's kind of where we're at. And what I see us heading toward is we're going to have, essential services that are continuing to be utilized in working and operating, and then other things that are going to be asked to, or where you're going to be asked to, limit contact with other people or limit exposure to some of your clients. So that's where we really want to get into the next phase of this, which is, okay, what can we do? What can we do as a community? What can we do as real estate professionals? And what can be done overall to really stop the spread of this? And more importantly, to be able to get back to a situation where we're all having a little bit of normalcy and we're back into a working world. And the first thing that we look at, I was on a webinar last week, and a guy, he gave a very, I thought it was the perfect analogy. And if you think to all of the times when you are on an airplane and they're going through their whole, the exits and all the different stuff, your life jacket under your seat and all of those things, one of the things they talk about is having, if the oxygen masks drop, make sure to put yours on first, then help anybody else that needs assistance. And, the reason I bring that up is inside of this, where we're talking about self-care, is if you don't take care of yourself and you get sick, you're not going to be able to help your clients. You're not going to be able to help all of the other people that you're working with. You're not going to really be able to do much of anything. And so we really want to emphasize that as you can be oftentimes the very center of the world in regards to connecting all of these different people, like you really need to make sure that you take care of yourself first. And, what we're seeing with that right now is, once again, I talk about deferring to people who are smarter than I am, which is a long and distinguished list. I always want to make sure that we're looking at things like the World Health Organization and CDC, and not a random article you found on the internet or on social or something like that. And the things that we're really looking at right now is, if you've been sick or anyone around you has been sick, make sure that you give yourself that time to be quarantined or to stay away from other people. And as we're looking through, now with the stay-at-home order, this is going to be something where I think it's going to be a lot easier because they're basically mandating it or forcing it. But really err on the side of caution, and so the first thing we can do is follow all those rules. And the next thing we need to do is we need to have a plan. And so, as we're talking about planning, with WFG, literally our leadership has been meeting pretty much on the daily to figure out, okay, so what has happened since we last met? What are the things that we see going forward? How can we, operate to an extent where we can still take care of everyone and yet not add increased exposure to our employees or the clients that are coming in? And so with that, here's an example of the types of things that we've done here at WFG, really just to try to keep people safe. It started out last week with some really simple things. And what I mean by your pen is your pen. It's like, we're not going to have pens that are used by multiple people. Once you touch it, you use that to sign. Nobody else does. You take that pen home with you, and you then go on your merry way with a new pen. Deep cleaning of offices, where it used to be something we had a cleaning crew and we did the standard cleaning that most offices do. We now have a team of people that are rotating through all of our offices and making sure that they are all cleaned to a higher level than what they traditionally do. Enhanced signing areas is something that we have gone through and put together. And what that is making sure that we have, say, one room that is clean and it's wiped down before and after the signing every time, to make sure that when your principals are going in there, that they're not going to be sick or they're not going to be exposed to something from the people that were there before. We've also started to implement a healthcare screening questionnaire. And really that is, are you sick? Have you been around somebody who's sick? Have you been traveling? And we've been asking these questions, not trying to get their full medical history, but just to make sure that they're safe to be coming in and we're safe to be having them inside of our offices, and that people coming in after them will also be safe. The signings are also something that's becoming different, is that we're looking for ways to potentially even do more things electronically. Just have everything else signed prior to them coming in. And then all of the pages that need to be signed with wet ink and have a notary and everything like that, that gets done later. So these are things that we're looking toward. And much like the real estate offices, we're closing the offices to the public. We only want the principals there. So we don't even want, unfortunately, you as real estate brokers or lenders there, because we're just trying to minimize the number of people that are coming through the door or that could potentially be exposed or expose our employees to things. So those are the types of things we are currently doing. So when we talk about a plan for you, the things that we want to look at, and the reason that this really comes up is there are a few different reasons. Number one, we want to be able to clearly communicate with your clients. We want you to be able to clearly communicate with your clients what it is that you're doing, what are the things that you're going to start doing because of the situation, and then what are the expectations on them. So what we're trying to do is really create marching orders for how we can make sure that everyone stays safe and that everybody's on the same page. Then the last part is the contingencies where, okay, let's say something just changed, as in the mandate this morning, something has drastically changed. What are our contingencies to still continue to be able to do our job, or to effectively at least be able to manage our clients, our transactions, and things along those lines. So the first place we want to start is we want to look at what are the things that we're doing already. And these are things that I would absolutely bring into my buyer presentation. If I'm going in on a listing appointment, I would bring that in. And some of this may be something that can even be fluid in relation to whether or not it's relevant today. But I think a lot of these principles are going to be relevant long after our stay-at-home order goes away. We're still going to want to exercise some of these practices. So, there's a lot of stuff that you guys do on the daily that is actually built for a situation like that. So the things that I look at is your paperless strategy. Obviously all of your documents are online. You're using ZipForm Plus, either DocuSign or SkySlope. You have things like paperless pipeline. So there are all of these products that you have currently in your arsenal that you just don't usually talk about, or you probably just mention them as a footnote. What I would do is I would now attach these to be part of the strategy that you're using when you're going and talking to your clients on how you minimize their exposure to other people, and yet how you can still continue to do business in some way, shape, or form while all of us are on lockdown. And so the first ones I would talk about, obviously, is all the transactional stuff. The next thing that we look at is there is an opportunity here really to focus on the quality of your marketing and your listing marketing. And what we look at is if you have better photos, if you have listing videos, if you have 3D, things along those lines, these are all opportunities for you to do two things. The first you can do is you can get people that will want to see, or they will see enough of the property that they might even be able to make a decision on that without ever walking inside. And number two, to those ends, if there's something that would disqualify that property for somebody, your marketing allows them to walk away without ever having to go in that house, that would then potentially contaminate or create some sort of a situation where the person that lives in the house could get sick or could have some sort of complication. So this is a time where you can change the conversation from, hey, I use professional photography and I create listing videos, to here's the things I'm going to do to minimize your exposure as a homeowner, but also make your home look fantastic when we're talking about getting online, or when we're talking about putting things out there while people are searching. I have not seen any data yet, but my guess is, we've seen all the internet traffic data, coming in from things like Netflix and Zoom calls and stuff like that. I've seen all sorts of data on that, but I wouldn't doubt that home searching actually goes way up during this time, because if you're stuck inside and you can't go anywhere, one of the things you're going to do is you're going to jump on your device or your computer and you're going to start searching around. And especially when there's headlines that are talking about, record low interest rates and things along those lines, it's something that's going to become relevant in people's world. So using this in both your buyer presentation and your listing presentation, talking about the types of marketing that are out there, could be really important. If we're talking about, the things that you already have for your buyer process, here's where I would leverage, okay, I have a great search tool. You're not going to have to look all over the internet to find something. Use my app, or, I know a lot of our clients are on either Redfin or Zillow or places like that. And I know you all hate Zillow. But I would look at, Redfin, for example, and say, okay, they offer, all of these great tools. And if you can show them how you or your company has a phenomenal way for them to search, they can disqualify houses that aren't going to meet their needs without ever having to go inside. And this is where you can also encourage them driving by. I know, driving is something that they're asking to be limited. But it would keep them from having to go inside. Using Google Street View is something that you probably already do already. And so this is also another time, one of the other things we talked about is, also making sure you don't show a single house to somebody that isn't able to buy it. So having that pre-approval done and things like that ahead of time is another thing that we've seen, like, hey, the reason we do this, is not to make you have an inconvenient experience. The reason we're doing this is we don't want to unnecessarily expose people to risk. And that's both them as the buyer and whoever's home they're going into as a seller. So those are the types of things we see with the volume process. So the next thing we want to look at is like, okay, what are the things that we are going to start to do? And one of the things that we've seen here, and this is, with the social distancing, this has become kind of a common tool, but having little signs like this, where, this was something that we have in our offices where it says, no offense, just makes sense. We're not going to hug, we're not going to shake hands, we're not going to do anything like that. And I know based on my experience, like there are a lot of you guys that are, you are that person that hugs every time that you finish up with the meeting, or you shake hands because you're professionals, and this is, while it's a social norm for us to do those things, this is where we need to break that habit just for the short term. And if you have little reminders, even little buttons or little things like that, where, you can make sure that you're putting out there like, hey, I'm not trying to be rude, just, we need to not shake hands, hug, etc., because it's just going to keep both of us safe. It's an easier way to have that conversation versus that time. And I'm sure you guys have all had plenty of them recently where you get halfway to a handshake or halfway to a hug and you're like, oh wait, never mind. And then it's kind of that awkward point where you have to pull back. Having something like this keeps it on the forefront and also, saves you from having that additional exposure. Now, the next thing that we really like, and this is something that you are all doing right now. So client interactions on Zoom calls. This is something that our team of nerds has been talking about for probably 18 months or so. And the reason that we really like Zoom is, well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, it's free. A lot of our clients really like that price of free, but it's also allowed us to become more effective. And what I mean by that is, for example, my colleague, Wendy, that works up in Seattle, she has a very large area that she has to drive all around in. And she was finding herself being stuck in traffic all the time and having to go all over the city. And so she wasn't effectively being able to get in front of her clients the way she wanted to. So she started blocking out, I think it was 4 or 6 hours every Monday to do quick 30-minute Zoom calls. So when you're not having to be face-to-face, or if there's something that you can cover, over a call like this, it's easier for that to happen. Now, on your side, where I really, really see the benefit of this and where we've really been talking about it is if you're in one of those situations, and this is where I see this being useful far beyond our current situation, but you're in a place where you have, a buyer or 2 buyers, a lender, and yourself that all need to get on a call and make a decision because you have a house that's going to have multiple offers and probably be off the market inside of, 12 hours or something like that. With Zoom, you can get all 4 people on that call. You can see each other's faces. So that way, one of the conversations we have a lot is it's all about nonverbal communication. So if somebody's upset or somebody doesn't like, the process on what's going forward, you can actually see that and have a conversation. But more importantly, you can have all the decision makers on one call at one time. So you're not sitting there sending a bunch of emails back and forth. You're not on a text thread where things get lost and you can actually have things being misconstrued. And more importantly, you don't have to play telephone where you tell somebody something, they tell somebody that, then it comes back. And next thing you know, the data is not even accurate anymore. So right now with a Zoom call, you can have everybody on the line. You can have everybody going through and saying their piece. But when you get off, everybody's on the same page. So it adds a layer of transparency that you can't really get any other way. And so that's where we really like, the client interactions going via Zoom call. The other thing that you can do is you can share your screen. So, I mean, basically like I'm doing right now with this slideshow, if you're wanting to walk your clients through whether it be paperwork or whether it be, your listing presentation or a buyer presentation, you can actually show them what's on the computer and have them follow along, where they see everything followed by, any type of Q&A that you would want after that point. So Zoom's one of the tools that we see continuing to be overly useful. But in the current situation where you're going to have to be at home, this can still allow you to be in front of all of your clients while you're not actually going out to see them in person. Now, the next thing that we looked at, and this is going to be one that's a little bit interesting. What we've talked about from a client standpoint, as far as like interaction, is using the messenger or messaging apps that are already out there that your clients are using. One of the things that we're trying to do, while we go through this, is not force a bunch of people to go out and adopt new programs or new software that they're not used to. And the nice thing about FaceTime, Instagram video chat, Facebook Messenger, they all have the ability to live chat back and forth without having to get any new programs, as long as your client's on one of those platforms. And the value that we see in this is this can easily be something where if you're wanting them to see a house, instead of everyone being inside of that house, you can actually go do live walkthroughs. They can ask questions, and it can be something where, you have this ability to basically have them do a walking tour of the property without ever setting foot in it. You would be doing that for them. The other thing you can do is if you're just trying to have conversations, and we'll dive into this a little bit more as we get further into the presentation, but this can also just be a keep in touch, a check-in mechanism. It can be something that really allows you to, stay in front and make sure that your people are doing okay without having to having to get them to download any other programs. So kind of along those lines, ways to stay in front and things you can build out. The next program that I want to talk about is BombBomb. And this is far from a new program out there. And it's another video program, but there are a couple of distinctions with this. The reason that BombBomb becomes important, and I think a lot of you can appreciate this, there have been different memes and things like that have been, out there in regards to what you look like when you don't have to have the video on versus what you look like when you do have to have the video on, is BombBomb isn't live. And a lot of people have fear over going live and doing something where you can't necessarily, whatever, hide your flaws or your warts or whatever else. And so BombBomb allows you to have multiple takes. It allows you to make sure that you worded things the way that you want to. And then, of course, the other thing that's important is if this is something you're going to be using as a marketing tool, it gives you all sorts of analytics and things like that too. So you can see who opened it, you can see how long they watched stuff. And it really does do a phenomenal job of allowing you to stay in front of your clients while never actually getting, face-to-face with them. So it gives the feeling of it without having to do it. And more importantly, you can do it on your terms, and then they can open it and then digest that content on their terms. So you don't have to be both available at the same time. Now, the difference is with BombBomb, there's a fee. You're talking about $100 a month or something along those lines. And so there's a fee involved. So if you're going to sign up for this, there are a bunch of different ways I would use it, but it would not only be for my keep in touch type programs, but I would use it if I'm submitting an offer. I would use it if I'm just getting ready to go have, this is future kind of post quarantine. But if I'm getting ready to meet somebody and I've never actually met them in person yet, I'm going to send them a BombBomb and say, hey, when we're going to be meeting in Starbucks, this is what I look like. This is what I sound like. So that way you don't have to do the weird little awkward shoulder tap for all the people that are there by themselves. And then I would also use it post after the meetings, hey, it was great to meet you. But just want you to know that I'm going to be doing this, this, and this for you. And don't forget, I need X, Y, and Z from you. So it's a great way to keep in touch. And if there are other systematic things along the lines that are part of your process, you can actually have those videos built out ahead of time. And then every time you reach that trigger, just send out something that you have inside of your vault or inside of your collection. So really cool tool. All right, so if we're moving on from client interaction to the buyer process, what are the things that we can do that will allow people still to continue to see houses without having to increase exposure for themselves, for you, or the people whose homes they're going in? The first one is, and this is one I like a lot, and it harkens me back to my days when I was a kid and we'd walk into a store and especially if it was a toy store or had some cool little trinkets or things like that, my mom would always say to us, she'd say, look with your eyes, not with your hands. And, you know, inside of this, we'll get into how this can be even more effective if you get the seller on the same page. But you can go through and see a lot of the house without ever getting, like, not touching light switches, not touching cabinet doors, not touching doorknobs, not really touching anything inside the house. So you walk through the house, think of it like putting your hands in your pockets, and just walking through and taking a look at stuff. I know as people, you know, one of the things we always want to do is touch is one of the very important senses to us. So you want to be able to touch and feel things. But during this time, having a policy where you just basically don't touch anything and you walk around the house with your pockets or your hands in your pockets, it's a very easy way to not spread those germs or not contract those things from whoever was in that place previous to you. If you want to go to, you know, kind of a next step on that, you know, you can have clean showings. And I know, you know, one of the things that was brought up in the last webinar and through conversations is that we're already running into shortages of hospital grade gloves and things like that. And I know Purell's been something that's been hard to track down. Basically anything cleaning wise has been hard to track down. But one of the things you can do is, I know I bought, it's been about a month ago, but I was able to pick up 10 pack of these gardening gloves for $10. So they're basically $1 a piece. And the ways that we've seen that is if you're wearing those, I obviously would get the orange ones because they're far cooler. But if you have these and you're always wearing these gloves, you know, they have the little rubber hands to where if you touch knobs or if you touch, you know, the light switches or anything like that, at the end of the day, you can throw these things in the washing machine and then clean them and be able to wear them again. So they're reusable, but they're still fairly inexpensive. We also had the suggestion of, you know, kitchen gloves, things like that. One of the things that we've also seen is having, you know, if you can get them, wipes to wipe things down. But that'll be a little bit more in the seller part as well. But wearing gloves, making sure that you're not touching anything, you know, with your actual hands, or if you're able to use Purell or you're able to use a sanitizer or wash your hands, things along those lines can really help out. And, you know, I know this is going to be an uncomfortable conversation for a lot of people. And if you want, you know, kind of an example of this, you can shoot me an email and I can show you, you know, the types of questions that we've been asking. But really, this is important. If your client has any kind of fever, cough, you know, anything where they're even feeling slightly not okay, you know, I know in the past it's been like, you know, oh, my partner or my husband or my wife, they're not feeling well, so I'm here by myself today. Well, in this situation, if your partner or your kid or your husband or your wife or whoever that person is sick, we don't want to see you either. And it's not meant to be rude, but it's one of those things, like exposure can happen so quickly and you may not be showing signs yet, to where asking the questions and making sure that not only is that person feeling okay, but everyone around them is feeling okay is really important. And this is a time where I think you can have that conversation and ask it in the right way to say, hey, we're trying to save, I'm trying to make sure that I stay healthy. I'm trying to make sure that you stay healthy, but also we're going to go into somebody's house and we need to make sure that they're healthy as well. So having some sort of a questionnaire or asking health questions before you walk in any place, you know, once again, with tact and without going too far into the, you know, the, like, what is your entire health history? This is something that I think is a very reasonable question. Now, the next thing that we're looking at, and this is where, you know, you can use either Instagram Live or Facebook Live or any of those. I know like Zillow and Trulia have digital walkthroughs, but doing a live digital tour is something that you can do where you're walking in there. You may even have multiple clients that want to see the same property. And instead of introducing all of these new people into that property, you can just do that. You can have them call in, they can be safe in their house, and they're not going to be able to they're not going to be getting exposed or exposing anyone else if it's just you that's in that house. So the live digital tours is what we've been starting to see a few more of as well. And the platform from that can literally be Facebook Live, Instagram Live, FaceTime, I mean, WeChat. There's so many of the programs out there. So it's just figuring out, okay, how do we want to do this? Now, the next thing that we're looking at is like, okay, so if we're going to be having so many more conversations digitally, I mean, that's really what we're looking at. It's not going to be face-to-face. You can still have phone calls and things like that. But Slack is another really cool tool, which it's a communication tool that allows you to have, you could have all of your different clients on here, and then it's in one repository. And so the nice thing about that is you can have multiple people inside of the thread, and you can have these constant conversations going back and forth. And unlike a text message where, you know, you end up getting one, it's like, let's say it's a husband and wife and you, it's like you have one with the husband, one with the wife, one together. If you have the dreaded green bubble, and anybody that's an iPhone person knows what I mean about the dreaded green bubble, all of a sudden you could have one where it splits off and now you have multiple threads and you have to go through the different threads to figure out like that thing that you talked about a little while back. And with Slack, it's all in one place and it's searchable. So you can just type the whatever it is you're looking for inside the search bubble or the search window, and it'll go back to whatever that message was. So those are the types of things we're seeing that can change inside of the buyer process. All right, let's jump into listings. So listings is something where I think you guys can have a huge impact on keeping people safe, but still getting people through the houses. Now, the clean showing process, you know, one of the things that I would do with my clients is I would say, all right, we're going to do clean showings only. And this goes back to the look with your eyes, not with your hands. So anytime you walk into the house, all the lights are going to be on. Cabinet doors, like not all the cabinet doors, but certain cabinet doors that will give people an idea of what the cabinets are like. All the room doors are going to be open. Having soap at every sink. You know, one of the things that was brought up is that, you know, inevitably somebody's going to end up needing to use the restroom. You know, have that available. Rubber gloves and hand sanitizer if possible. But really what we're trying to do is if anybody's going to walk into that house, we don't want you or them to turn anything on or off or open or close or touch any type of hardware. So everything's open, walk in, walk through, check it all out. And when you leave it exactly the way you found it. So the only door you would touch is that front door, which is a very easy thing to then clean if necessary. So the clean showing process only is something we really look at. You know, this is where I think, you know, you know, Matterport's been something that's been around for a while, and we see it, you know, traditionally in higher end homes. But having a 3D tour now can really get a lot of the people to walk through without ever having to actually walk through, you know, I mean, so you can walk room by room, you can see how it works, you can look up and down. And this is different than, you know, I see a lot that they call it a 3D tour, but it's really just a slideshow of the photos. You know, with Matterport or with iStaging actually takes, you know, programs or apps and things like that you can even use on your phone, and it will basically stitch them together. But what Matterport does is Matterport's kind of it's the original 3D tour. So what you see there on the top left is what they call their dollhouse view. And so Matterport it's a camera, and ideally you're going to want to get this done by a professional that owns a Matterport camera. I have a couple of companies that I can recommend if that's something that you don't have already. But it gives you the layout of the house, but then you can also walk in and you can basically walk room to room, look up and down, look all around. It's like you're actually walking through the house, and it's all done on a tablet, on a phone, or on your computer. And what iStaging does is it's a similar thing, except for it's more of a do-it-yourself. You use your camera, use whatever software you have, and you send it to them, and then they stitch it all together. But what it does, it allows people to actually walk in and see exactly what that house looks like and how it flows without having to physically step foot inside. And these are something that in this situation, I'm absolutely doing that. And I'm saying, you know, no actual showings unless you've done a walkthrough digitally. And hopefully those people that are not going to be interested they'll disqualify themselves, or people that are interested will I will only have people that are interested that are walking through the house. The next thing that we want to look at is, you know, one of the things that we hear from our agents and our clients all the time is the reason they want to walk through a house is because they need to see the room layout and how the house is there. And I know floor plans are, you know, on some listings, but it's not standard. And what I would say is while we are having people doing these types of tours and we're trying to keep people from having contact with each other, I would put a floor plan on every single one of my listings. And Floor Planner is actually a company that we have there's a partnership between them and RMLS. So if you go into your toolkit, your RMLS toolkit, you'll see that Floor Planner is in there. And it can be as cheap as, I want to say it's $69 a year in order to get floor plans done. Otherwise, it's a per cost basis. And the picture you can kind of see the sketch that somebody had sketched out on a piece of paper, and they will take that and then they will put it together. They will then make it look like a professional floor plan. So floor planner is a good way for you to make sure that people have an idea of how the house flows before they ever have to step foot inside. And so that's one of the cool things. And because there is already a because there's already, you know, a partnership there, then it's something that you can do, you know, basically immediately. And I did just get the question coming through is, can you watch this later or see it? Yes, I will put together a replay, but then also have this slide deck available for you guys to watch. So watch for that coming to your email. Floor plans is one of the things that I would absolutely put on every single one of my listings. Now, the next thing that we look at is one of the things. I was talking to customer service here at WFG, or Megan in our customer service department, and we're really looking at how do we create marketing that people don't have to touch. And this is especially relevant. You know, we have a lot of clients that use beautiful high-end magazine quality, almost brochures, where there'll be, you know, 6, 8, 10 pages. And what we see with that is a person that's touring the house will pick that up, flip through it, and then set it right back down on the counter where they found it, because once they flip through, they don't necessarily want to take it home. Well, every time that happens, you're now creating another opportunity for exposure. And so what we want to do is use something like Issue, where you can take that exact same thing, but now it becomes this beautiful digital online magazine that they can flip through on their own. And if you just had a link, they could pull that up right on their phone. They can refer back to it later, but now there's no flyers. And so no flyers is one of those things that now that is fewer things for people to touch, number one. And number two, it's not going to be something that's picked up and then left behind. And so the digital flyer is something that we're really looking at. And I know, especially on like just a one-page flyer, there's a lot of ways to do that. But if you're creating marketing that has multiple pages, Issue is a great way to make sure that that actually still looks just as beautiful when they're looking online. So it's the appearance part that's really nice. And the other thing that we've looked at, and this is with brokers, and right now I know with the you know, the COVID-19 addendum, you know, in the rental space and in the you know, using tenants and things like that, subject to interior inspection is something that's been around for a long time. It hasn't been necessary traditionally in our world. But now it's something that's relevant. It's like, okay, so you can write an offer on the house. You've gone through and done a 3D tour. You see how it flows. You've seen all the photos. You know, now we will let you write an offer. And especially if there's going to be multiple offers coming in, we'll accept the one that is most advantageous for that particular seller. And that's the person that can then come inside and decide whether or not they then want to move forward. But subject to interior inspection is definitely something I would look at right now, or think about, you know, with your clients, both on the listing side and potentially on the buying side. You know, while we're in this quarantine, I think that's a very valid way to go to potentially keep things moving. Now, the other thing that we've looked for from like a listing process is the virtual open house. And with the virtual open house, traditionally the way that we're seeing this being done is creating a Facebook Live or an event where you're going to go live on Facebook and you say the time that it's going to get started. And so now you can have people from all over everywhere that come in, follow your feed as you walk through that property. You know, for the homeowner, it helps them because they don't have a whole bunch of people coming through. They just have you, the listing agent. But it will open it up to where if people have questions, you know, you can walk from room to room, you can turn it around and show them exactly what you're talking about. So it can give people a pretty good idea of that virtual walkthrough without you having to be there for 2 or 3 hours. So you're there for that 30 minutes or whatever the time frame is. You let as many people as possible know. You say the time it's going to start. And once it fires up, you can have people come in and out all virtually while never having to leave their home. And so we are seeing some agents that are doing some pretty creative stuff with this. And as long as we're in this type of a situation in regards to the quarantine, this will limit that exposure, but also allow you to still get that house out in front of people. So those are the things that we would start doing in regards to both buyers and sellers. And the last thing we want to look at is how do we not forget about our past clients and the people that may need us right now. And so the past client process is all something that we're going to look at. And creating community is something I really want to focus on. You know, I talked about how this is a people moment, not a sales moment. Well, using this opportunity for you to really get into the middle of your client's world in a positive way is something where I think they will create a lasting value, from you, but also it will really step that relationship up with your past clients too. And, one of the things we've seen, with people that are sick or at risk or having issues, they can't go anywhere. And so if you can be that person that will stop by and grab some food or bring them some groceries or bring them books or a board game or something like that. And all you have to do is just drop it on their front steps, text them and say, hey, I just put it outside, and then let them come and grab it. That is the self-care that keeps you from getting exposed. But it's also that thing, if we're talking about, creating an experience or an experiential marketing that will put you in front of them and make you, still very much relevant in the center of their world without either, creating harm for you or them. And so I love the idea of, running things and basically being a delivery person. And I know that's making it sound very, very minimal. But those little types of things and nuances will be very valuable to your clients. The other thing that we've seen is clients that are doing Facebook watch parties. And so you pick a show, a movie, even videos online, and you say, all right, we're all going to jump online and we're going to watch this movie together. We're going to watch this show together. And you can see on the right, you basically can have this commentary going back and forth the entire time. So while you're not sitting in the same room, oftentimes it feels like you do. So that isolation of, I'm sitting here by myself and I'm bored and I don't have anyone to talk to, or whatever your feeling is, can be alleviated by having other people that share the experience with you. And a Facebook watch party is something that would make that really easy for you to connect. And you can do this with a lot of clients all at once, and just let them interact back and forth. So it really just helps kind of diffuse the loneliness is what we're looking at. The next idea that we've had and that we've seen that I really like is, especially right now with people in the service industry, restaurants, bars, they're being especially hard hit, and in the Portland market, all they can do is takeout. And so we've had a couple of clients that their idea is they're going to go to their favorite restaurant, whichever one that is, and they say, all right, for the next hour or the next $300, your takeout food is on me. And so all you have to do is, and you can figure out how you want to do the approval. Maybe it's a FaceTime, maybe it's they call you and then you call it in for them, however you want that to work. But what it really does is number one, it's bringing revenue into those restaurants and for those people that are working they're really struggling right now. So it's infusing money back into that business, but it's also allowing your clients to get exposure to that favorite business of yours, all while helping, feed them and take care of people that need it. And so it really, it can create the community. It supports the businesses that you want to support and to keep going. But it also helps your clients out. And especially if they're clients in need that really do need that food, or they're going to be struggling for money, or they were laid off. Like, this is a really cool way to balance all of that out. And the last one that I want to touch on, and this seems kind of odd, but one of the things that I was reading an article and they were talking about how being isolated more than anything creates depression for people. And so one of the things that they talked about is having a pet is one of the things that while you're by yourself in your house is one of the singular ways that you can most impact somebody's health and happiness. Because they now have a cat to snuggle with or a dog to play with, or they have somebody there. So they're not just sitting in their house all day by themselves. And obviously the Humane Society, they've got a lot of pets that are going to need homes. And so I'm not saying you should make a long-term decision, like I'm going to get a dog for the next 12 years based on the next couple of months. But if it's somebody that was on the fence, this is a great way to really get those people to, basically have a friend for life. And we even had a couple of clients that had mentioned that they're like, well, I'll just do rent a puppy. If somebody wants to have my dog for an afternoon, I'll just go drop the dog off. They can play with it. They can have fun for a little bit. The dog would love the walk and be good to go from there. But I would look at things like that, where you can find ways to then keep them entertained and not feeling lonely. And so that's one of the examples that I saw that I actually thought was quite creative. And there's a lot more out there. But it's definitely one of those things that I think could be beneficial. So those are really the ways that we've looked as a team to stay in front of the clients, change our process, think about our buyers, think about our sellers, And as I mentioned, this slide deck might be almost irrelevant next week if something completely changes, and it's going to be continuing to move forward. So I would encourage you guys to create a plan, outline the things you're doing already, outline the things that you want to start doing, because this is where you can really shine and show your professionalism. And, for you guys that are in Oregon, I wanted to give you this real quick. I'll put this slide up. To get your CE credit, before we finish up here, all you have to do is email credithour@wfgnationaltitle.com. So just credithour@wfgnationaltitle.com. And all you have to put in the email is just say, coronavirus plan for real estate, the name of this course, course 0674, and then your license number. So if you could put all of those things in an email to credithour@wfgnationaltitle.com, then we can get you that credit hour for Oregon. I know it's something that we're trying to do as much as possible to help you guys out, but this is, once again, uncharted territory and not something that we've had in the past. So you have to be on the live recording. This can't be on the recording. It has to be on the actual webinar. But I'll get you guys all the information as far as the slides. Now, went one too far. So the one thing, finally, and in summary of all this stuff, I think this is, and I don't know how many of you are Maze Runner fans, but one of the things that he says, the most important thing is that we all have each other because we're all in this together. And what it really comes down to is it is going to take the entire community and the entire village to get through this. And we all need to come together. We need to be patient. We need to follow the rules that are being put out in front of us, and then figure out ways to still keep connected with our friends and family. So thank you guys so much for jumping on. If you want to connect with me, I do want to put this slide up again. It's themodernDayAgent.com/Aaron-Stelle. You can find my Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that kind of stuff, LinkedIn. So please do come connect with me. And I'm going to jump on now. I see I've got some questions coming through. So thank you so much.